I'm James Demer, the audio nomad. We're here in Fiji on the set of Survivor, and today we're going to speak with John Kierhofer, who's the creative genius behind the challenge department and also an avid music lover. So, John, you have the distinction of being one of 4 crew members who have been on every single season of Survivor, and we're up to season 48.
Yeah.
It's incredible. That's a long time.
Every season of Survivor on location. Brian Barefoot is an editor who has been on every season of Survivor, but he's back home in LA.
Okay, yeah. I think yours maybe is a little cooler. That's pretty awesome. So, being away or being out of the country for such a long time, you know, how does music help you cope with being in all of the locations you've been for the past 20 plus years?
You know, it's funny you use the word cope because I've spent more than half my life on location for 25 years, and the only coping is the transition back home, then the transition back to location. You get settled into your rhythms, but the Survivor location and the Survivor crew, I mean, as corny as it sounds, 25 years is just another half of my life. It's just my family. It's my other family, and I've never been married. You know, I've had relationships, but I've never been married. Don't have kids, so it makes having a dual existence much more easy. And music is just part of my life. And one of the great things about everybody knows that I love music, and because it's always omnipresent in my office. And having an international crew, I've been turned on to a lot of different music, especially Australian music. And a lot of my best friends on the show are Australian. Season 2, we were in Australia, where we got a big portion of our crew who are still with us. And there's bands, like a band called Powderfinger. Now, you may never, have you heard of Powderfinger?
I've heard of Powderfinger.
Okay, I love Powderfinger. I can't believe they never got as big as U2 or even Van Halen, for that matter, one of my favorite bands of all time. But Powderfinger is one of my top 5 favorite bands of all time, and most Americans have never heard of them.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
In our office, I share an office with my 2 creative partners, Millhouse and AB, and we're all big music files, audiophiles, and we have our Bluetooth speaker, subwoofer, and there's always music in the challenge office. You know, there's always one of us has a playlist going at any time.
Well, I've been in the challenge office and I've heard your music. Who gets to choose? How does that work?
I have seniority.
Okay.
And I'm also in first. You know, I get there before those guys get there. I get in early. I make the coffee. I get everything ready. So by the time they get in, coffee's done. My music's already on, usually classic rock, but a lot of 90s alternative, grunge, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so I guess a lot of my music takes precedent because I'm in there first, and I link up to the Bluetooth first.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know you're famous for naming challenges after song lyrics. How did that come about, and when did that start?
You know, the first season we had to come up with 24 challenges, and that was just so daunting, and we just called them Quest for Fire or gave them whatever name they could. And then it was season 2, and the first, boomerangs. We're in Australia, so I named this challenge Return to Sender. My folks were huge Elvis fans. I listened to Elvis since I was a little kid, and Return to Sender seemed to make sense. And then after that, in season 3, we had Stairway to Heaven, and legal asked us to change the name because it was a series of posts that you had to stick into a series of holes and then work your way up. And then I get this call from legal that we might get in trouble with Led Zeppelin. And I'm like, really? So we called it Stairway to the Stars. Then we had another Led Zeppelin song, Rock and Roll. We had this big boulder that we rolled across the savannah and called it Rock and Roll. But I think it was like season 7 or 8 in Pearl Islands that we really just started, okay, hey, we got to name more of these things after songs. Rock Bottom by Kiss and different songs.
Yeah.
And different bands. Get a Grip. One of my favorite challenges of all time is called Get a Grip, which was an album by Aerosmith and just a real basic challenge.
Yeah, that's so cool. Do people recognize those? Like, do you get like strangers that
People will say,
comment?
what I find amazing, because of the internet and because everything's out there. Before it was just for us
Right.
to remember the name, and then people will come up to us at a Survivor event. It's not like I go to a coffee shop and people say, "Hey, aren't you?" No, but at a Survivor event,
Yeah.
people come. I love Get a Grip. I love Samotion. I love this
Yeah.
challenge. It's like, oh, cool. I'm glad to
Yeah.
hear it. And they know them by name, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. I know, like, working on the beach, I think Samotion is the one that I hear the most. They're always, especially as, the contestants get down to 5 or 6 players, they always wonder, is it going to be Samotion this year?
And it's cool. Last time we did it a couple of years ago, Simo, Simon Ross, who is our production designer, he created that in China for an art exhibit. When we used to do the art projects, and he just made a small version of it. He's a welder, and he was just playing with his little thing and rolling marbles down this miniature Samotion.
Yeah.
And it was Dan Monday at the time who said, "Hey, let's make this huge,
Yeah.
and it could be a challenge."
Yeah.
And it became a staple.
Yeah.
And named after Simo.
After Simo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a classic. Yeah. I think it's probably the challenge that I'd like to take home. If I ever had one in my house, I think that would be a fun one.
Yeah, because it'd be expensive to ship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe buy it on Etsy or something.
You probably get a version this big on Etsy. We made a cardboard.
Right. Too funny. So when you were a kid, I'd imagine you're probably like me, you had a sort of a moment where you really discovered music. I remember mine. Do you have a moment like that?
I remember, I have a few eras. I can remember, people say you can't remember until you're 4 years old or whatever. I remember being a toddler. My parents had a record player, a Victrola, RCA Victrola record player. It was a big mahogany case. They got married in 1956, and they bought this new record player for their apartment, and that was their wedding gift to each other.
Yeah.
And they had records in it, and an AM radio, and there was a big speaker, and it had a lid on it. I remember being a little kid going across the floor and hearing Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and Bob Newhart comedy albums, and I'm like, where are those people? And I'd hear the speaker, and I'd put my hand up against the cloth where the speaker was. I'm like, where are the people? I remember hearing Sonny and Cher. Where are they? I thought there was little people in there singing, but I remember that. But the first time I think, and I'd love to say it was Van Halen 1, I heard that guitar and I knew, I was kind of nerdy, and it was the soundtrack to Grease, was the first album that I had that I just played to death.
Yeah.
I wore it out, just played it so much.
Yeah.
But the soundtrack to Grease.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. That's a good one. I remember you telling me or hearing about these. It was like a group that you got together. Maybe it was in Caramoan. Some friends that listened to music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like
Can you tell me about that? What was that?
One of our friends started this music appreciation night, and there's a handful of us that just loved music, and we were always talking about music. And we'd pick a night where we had the day off the next day generally, and get some cocktails, some wine and cheese or whatever, and come up with a theme. And we each had to bring, and sometimes it'd be like 6 or 8 of us.
Yeah.
So we each got 5 songs, and we had to. There would be a theme, like in Caramoan, it was the weather, and we had to choose a song and have a story on why this song meant something to us. What was the inner meaning? Like one of mine was Admiral Halsey by Paul McCartney and Wings, and there was the thunder and the rain sound effects and so that meant something to me when I was a little kid hearing that.
Yeah.
And so we would do that for years. Until we shortened up our schedule and we don't have time for that kind of stuff anymore.
I remember that was my first season was Caramoan 25.
Yeah.
One of those 25 or 26, it rained like 21 out of 23 days.
And the
was
contestants
miserable.
were just miserable. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
And
rough.
trying to build challenges and
the rain.
and a lot of stuff shrunk in size because we just couldn't get it built.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild. All right, last question. When you're at home, what's your favorite way to listen to music? Headphones, stereo at home, in your car?
Slam dunk. This is an easy one.
Okay.
In my car. Since I was old enough to drive, one of my first cars, maybe the first car I ever purchased, was a 71 Pinto Runabout. And I got these two speakers that my buddy's brother had these speakers, and he was replacing the speakers in his car, and they were stereo speakers. And I think I bought it for $10 for the pair. They were crap. And I cut holes in the deck of my Pinto station wagon with this AM radio. It was a Philco AM radio, and I just ran the wires like under the seats and spliced it together. So it wasn't stereo, it was double mono.
Right.
But to me, it was music coming from the back of the car, and I called it stereo, and that's where I learned about stereo. So because, that's not what stereo means. It's not what it is. But I've always had music in my car. From that Pinto to my next Pinto, I got a boom box for my high school graduation, cassette player, and that would sit in the back seat of my car because it had much better sound than I could afford for a car stereo. And I always played it. And as soon as I had a little disposable income, when I started working in the 90s, I remember I had a 1995 Ford F-250 pickup truck, and I replaced the stock stereo and speakers and went to Alan Ed's Auto Sound and got an Alpine stereo with a CD changer and like really good speakers, and that was the start. And I've been blessed to be able to prioritize good tunes in my car because I drive a lot, and I just like to crank it up and hear every, the pick hit every string on a Tom Petty song or whatever. So in my car is my favorite place to listen to music.
Well, if I'm ever in San Diego, you're going to have to take me for a ride, and we'll crank up some tunes.
Yeah, we'll whatever your playlist has, we'll play it up.
We haven't actually talked about why we're sitting in a helicopter.
Well, simple. Helicopters are cool, and we have one on location.
It's true. And that's it. That's enough.
So.
Thanks, John.
All right.
Okay. Take care.
All right, Gene.
Special thanks to Linsol. To find out more about the amazing audio products they sell, check the link below.